Hey, what's up, guys? Coming to you this morning with another What's Next. Or no, I'm sorry, this is not a What's Next. This is a Shut the Fuck Up. And this one is on reigning WBC champion Gary Russell Jr., WBC Featherweight Champion at 126, the longest reigning champion in boxing right now. I am about fed up with fucking Gary Russell and his bullshit. So, Gary Russell has been talking mad shit for weeks now about wanting to fight Terrence Bud Crawford at welterweight. And now he's calling Crawford a bitch. He said a formal offer was made from the PBC and Al Heyman to Terrence Crawford for, a fight between those two. And, and then he said, if Crawford doesn't take the fight with me, Crawford's a bitch. Guys, let's get into this for a minute, because I'm really fucking pissed about this. I am really pissed. Gary Russell Jr., talented. I think he's a great fighter. But this dude has been annoying the shit out of me for years now, and I'm fucking done with it. So now I'm about to go off on you, Gary Russell Jr., Mr. Gary Russell Jr., which is his great inventive nickname. This guy in 2014 got worked against Vasily Lomachenko. He got outboxed and lost for the WBO featherweight title. Comes back 9 months later, takes on Johnny Gonzalez. Not a major upset, but an upset. Clean fourth round knockout. Best win of his career. Impressive performance. Since then, this guy has fought once a year. And then he jokes around and calls himself Santa Claus. Like, if you're going to fight the best in the division once a year, fine. Okay, I don't like it. I'd rather you fight twice a year. But if you're going to fight the best, then fucking great, man. That's awesome. And it's not to say he hasn't fought good competition since, but he took on some unknown fighter in 2016 in his first defense, got a second round TKO. He came back in 2017, took on a former world champion. I think 17, he fought Oscar Escandón, and I think that was 17, and he beat him by a seventh round TKO. But Escandón was past it by that point, so it was like, so what? Came back in 2018, and he took on his number one contender, Joseph Diaz Jr., and that was an impressive performance. I got to give it to him. He fought him. Joseph Diaz, was looking good in the first half of the fight. He came back and, took over the second half and just cleanly outboxed him and won a clean unanimous decision. Impressive performance. Then he came back a year later. He fought again, this time against faded former 122-pound champion Kiko Martinez. An injury to Martinez gave him a fifth-round TKO win. And then a year later, or less than a year later, this year, 2020, he took on undefeated Mongolian and number one contender Tuxko Nyambayar. It was his mandatory number one contender. And he beat him by a clean 12-round unanimous decision. Impressive. But he's only fought 5 times in 5 years, and actually six times once in each calendar year the past 6 years, in terms of 15 to 20. So it's like, it's like, I could understand if he was on a Mayweather level doing something like that, but he's not. He's a great fighter, but he has not established himself as the top guy at 126 with what he's done fighting only once a year. He's had opportunities to fight the best fighters. He has not fought them. He has not signed up to fight them. When Josh Warrington was calling Gary Russell out earlier this year and last year, Russell didn't say shit. And going into the fight in February against Nyambayar, he said after that fight, he's moving up to 130 or 135. And he actually said lightweight, 135. He's been calling everybody out there, but he hasn't given up his belt and moved up. Then recently he just said, I'll fight the bar fighter Josh Warrington, which, I think he'd beat Warrington. But why isn't he signing up to fight him? He had opportunity before to fight him. Now that Warrington has a fight locked up with WBA champion Shu Kan, now Gary Russell's calling out Warrington's name. Russell it needs to shut the fuck up. I am so tired of this guy. And now we get to that he needed to shut the fuck up even just for that stuff. But now we get to Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford, one of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound. What does him fighting Gary Russell Jr. outside of name recognition, which Gary Russell is not, you know, a marquee name. He's a good fighter. People know him. But he's not a top-tier guy. This isn't like Mikey Garcia moving up and fighting Errol Spence last year. He doesn't have the same kind of name Mikey Garcia has. What does this fight do for Crawford? Crawford is dying to get one of the best welterweights in the world to fight him from the PBC. None of those guys want to fight him. They always decline his fights, you know, and then nobody wants to cross the street. Gary Russell would be coming up from 126 to welterweight at 147 and fighting Terrence Crawford. 21-pound jump right there. There's 130, 135, 140. He's moving up 4 weight classes to fight Terrence Crawford. What does that do for Crawford? If he wins, people are going to say, so what? You beat a little guy. If he loses, Crawford's going to look like a piece of shit for losing to a little guy who jumped up 4 weight classes. Where's the benefit in beating Gary Russell Jr. and whipping his ass? There isn't one. So why would Terrence Crawford take that fight? So Gary Russell, you're going for the money. You're trying to make a payday and keep doing your Santa Claus fucking routine. And he's just trying to get a big payday because Tank Davis and Leo Santa Cruz didn't want to fight him at 130 or 135. He was hoping to get one of those 2 guys in the ring. It didn't happen. There's not a lot of other PBC fighters between those 2 weight classes that he can make money with. And all the other guys from the other promotions, they're not lining up to fight him next. So Gary Russell's running out of options. He's trying to cash out by fighting Crawford. Gary Russell's not a guy that he's shown he's not a guy that wants to stay on a regular boxing work schedule. He's fine with just fighting once a year. Now he's trying to cash in on a big fight just to get his name out there and everything, and to show that he had the balls to move up that much weight. But really, it's about cashing out, because a lot of these guys are making bank to fight Crawford right now, and he knows that. He wants to make that paper and then, you know, move back down in weight after he gets his ass whipped, because that's what would happen. But you know what? Terrence Crawford doesn't need to look Gary Russell's way. He can take on a former champ like Kell Brook, and people are going to say, yeah, you beat a former champ who hasn't been relevant for a couple years, but at least he was on weight. At least he's a guy around that weight class. And Terrence Crawford needs to keep doing that shit. If he entertains Gary Russell Jr., I think Crawford, that is a stupid, stupid mistake, because it doesn't do anything for his career to smash on Gary Russell. Nothing. So, you know, so Gary Russell, shut the fuck up, man. And either stay and fight at 126 and defend your title again before the end of the year, or give up that fucking belt, go take a tune-up bout, or somebody decent at 130, 135, and get back in the fucking ring, man. Stop talking already, and shut the fuck up. All right, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.